know there's almost nothing as wholesome and basic to American culture as a good cup of coffee. Choose from morning blend, evening blend, and everything in between. Get your American Family Coffee and support the American Family Association at afastore.net.
In recent years, Americans have watched as Washington spent trillions and trillions of dollars building up foreign countries while allowing our own country's infrastructure to fall into a state of total disrepair. Look at Korea. We have a border at Korea. We have a wall of soldiers, but our own border, we don't take care of it. Think of it. We spend billions of dollars in other countries maintaining their borders, and we can't maintain our borders in our own country.
Mexico has got to help us at the border.
I do believe that we should have universal voting for everyone.
People who do contribute and are great people and contributing should be allowed to vote. So maybe
okay, so that would include
voting,
good. Well, I'm glad we
well,
can give up on the Russian collusion narrative.
California has sued the Trump administration 29 times.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy. Yeah. And welcome to a brand new week of broadcasting on the American Family Radio Network, broadcast of Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. And I, along with Jeff and Rob, we are your loyal, humble, cheerful, congenial, convivial, and amiable three amigos ready to saddle up and ride.
By the way, people are now starting to greet me at church with howdy.
Howdy?
Yeah, you started something.
Started something that I may live to regret.
Good or bad, it started.
It started one way or another. Anyway, glad to have you in the program, in the audience today. However, you're with us, live streaming us on Facebook, live streaming us on YouTube, listening to us on one of our stations that comprise the American Family Radio Network, audio streaming us through your computer at afr.net. Listening as you go, using one of our apps for the iPhone or for the Android, catching us on podcasts, which a lot of you do at the end of the day. Happy to have you in the conversation. Don't forget, we record the program as we live stream it on Facebook, and we publish it on the Facebook website at the end of the program with an extensive table of contents so you can find your way around the program. Well, let's get rolling today. I want to turn our attention to the Word of God as we begin the program today, as we customarily do. We're using a schedule you can find at pray.afa.net. Again, I would encourage you to bookmark that page, open it up every day. If you're on Twitter, I send a tweet out with a link to the prayer for that day. If you follow us on the Focal Point Facebook page, I post a Facebook link which contains the prayer, so you don't have to go to the website to get the prayers right on the Facebook page. So I encourage you to read along and pray along with us. Now, Psalm 69, the heading that the ESV gives to this is Save Me, O God. So this is a time when David was just in a desperate circumstance, and what we've seen, the theme through a lot of these recent Psalms has been David in desperation crying to God for help, and here he is again. I remember when I was a kid, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old, my dad took me down to the city pool to get some swim lessons from these guys, and I remember this today, still today I remember this. I was just learning how to swim, didn't really know yet, and I was in the shallow end of the pool, and there was a little wave that pulled me away from the edge of the pool. And I panicked because I couldn't see my dad, and I panicked because I couldn't see the guys that were supposed to teach me how to swim. You know, and I was starting to ship water, and I was starting to panic and kind of flail around and thought I was going down right there. That's the situation that David was in Psalm 69. He says, Save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. Ever feel like that? That the waters are just up to your neck. You barely keeping your head above water. David knows how that feels. I sink in deep mire where there is no foothold. So he's in this water. He's going down, going under, barely can get his breath. And he's trying to find some purchase for his feet. And the bottom of the river is muddy. He keeps slipping and sliding. I have come into deep waters and the flood sweeps over me. I am weary with my crying out. My throat is parched. My eyes grow dim with waiting for my God. So he had been praying. He had been crying out to God, and he was still waiting for an answer from God. Now, what was washing over David was hatred like waves. The hatred he was getting from people who hated God, and they took their hatred of God out on him because he was God's representative. So the hatred from the world was washing over him like waves. Now, David says that they hated me without cause in verse 4. He says, more in number than the hairs of my head are those who hate me without cause. Now, that wouldn't take too many in Rob's case. More in number than the hairs of my head. That'd take one to satisfy that quotient. Are those who hate me without cause. Mighty are those who would destroy me, those who attack me with lies. You know, and the world will hate us without cause. I'm sure you've recognized that now, just like they hated David without cause. And this is what those who hate God, they attack those who love God. You know, the truth is, and they attack us with lies. You know, the truth is, we don't hate anyone. We love everybody. We love them enough to tell them the truth. But they tell lies about us, that we're Islamophobes, that we hate Muslims, that we're homophobes, that we hate homosexuals, that we're to blame for slavery, that we are white supremacists. All lies, but that's all we hear from the cultural leaders on the left. Now, none of us is claiming that we are perfect. Even David says in verse 5 to God, you know my folly, the wrongs I have done are not hidden from you. So we're not saying we're perfect or anything of the sort. David was well aware of his own deficiencies in character, but we are not guilty of the things that they are charging us with. So we want to be sure in this time of pressure, by the way, that we conduct ourselves as men of God, that we don't give way to the pressure and begin lashing out in anger and vengefulness and bitterness, because people are watching. And if we blow up and we get vengeful and angry and bitter, we dishonor God and we do damage to the cause of God. This is why David says in verses 6 and 7, let not those who hope in you, God, be put to shame through me because of my poor response to the pressure. O Lord of hosts, let not those who seek you be brought to dishonor through me. O God of Israel, for it is for your sake that I have borne reproach, that dishonor has covered my face. So we need to recognize that people are watching. We want our conduct to bring honor and glory to God and credit to him because we're identified with him. But the reality is that we are hated only because we are identified with Christ and are dedicated to expand his kingdom and defend his truth. We have a passion for these things. David says in verse 9, zeal for your house, for your kingdom, has consumed me. And that's the passion that we have. Our deepest passion is to see the kingdom of God expand. We have a passion for those things, and that's why the world and people want to silence us. They're not hating us so much as they are hating the Christ who lives within us and is expressing his life through us. Sometimes the attack even comes from people in our own families. David says in verse 8, I have become a stranger to my brothers, an alien to my mother's sons. Sometimes the hatred comes from people that are close to us, people in our own families. Now, Christ is not here for them to take out their hatred on him, so they take it out on us. And this ostracism can hurt. You know, in verses 20 and 21, reproaches have broken my heart so that I am in despair. So we're not impervious, we're not Superman, we're not made out of steel. These things do affect us, they do hit us. It's okay for us to pray for justice to come to those who do this, that treat us, hate us without cause. And David prays some pretty strong prayers against his enemies. But let's finish with this. When I was learning how to swim, just before I went under, I felt strong arms reach around me, lift me up out of the waters, and set me on the edge of the pool, out of the waves, out of danger, in a place of safety. What my earthly father did for me, our heavenly Father will do for you. Notice the promise of God in verses 35 and 36. God will save Zion and build up the cities of Judah. The people shall dwell there, possess it. The offspring of his servants shall inherit it, and those who love his name shall dwell in it. Well, let's go to, well, I'm going to save the prayer for after the break because I'd have to rush through the prayer. I don't want to do it. This is pretty rich stuff. So we will finish our time in Psalm 69 by praying the themes in this psalm and the very words back to God when we come back out of the break. Don't go anywhere. Focal Point American Family Radio.
Judy Goodell and her husband set up a charitable gift annuity through the AFA Foundation.
What we love about it is that it represents stewardship principles that we feel strongly about. So we got very, very excited about this opportunity.
With a charitable gift annuity through the AFA Foundation, an AFA supporter can guarantee a permanent monthly income, as well as supporting the American Family Association for years to come.
We do feel convicted about really praying about all that God has really blessed us with. And so many people we know just want to leave it all to their kids. And we know the danger of that. And so we just are really just trying to pray through it. And God gave us great confirmation as we prayed that this would be a good use of the Lord's money.
Find out if a charitable gift annuity is right for you at 800-326-4543, extension 345, or email foundation@afa.net.
And they withstood King Uzziah and said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord." My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Corner. Paul Manafort has filed a motion to dismiss the charges against him, noting that Rod Rosenstein could not appoint Bob Mueller to any investigation outside the scope of the 2016 presidential campaign. The legal reasoning here is that Jeff Sessions only recused himself from issues relating directly to the presidential campaign. This means Sessions retains the authority to direct and supervise any litigation related to non-collusion charges. In short, it seems Mueller has overstepped his bounds.
Listen to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Central on AFR. For more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, and amiable as always. Want to finish our time in the Word by doing what we customarily do is pray the content, pray the very words of Scripture back to God. That's how we know that He will hear our prayers, because He hears every prayer that's prayed according to the will of God. No better way to do that and to know we're doing that than pray His own word back to Him. So let's take a couple of minutes and pray the themes of Psalm 69 back to God. Save us, O God, when the waters come up to our neck, when it seems as if we are sinking in the miry depths where there is no foothold, when we have come into deep waters and the floods engulf us, when we are in pain and distress. May your salvation, O God, protect us. You know our folly, O God. We are sinful, and we know our guilt is not hidden from you. Yet there are those who hate us without reason, and are our enemies without cause, and seek to hurt us. They treat us with scorn because of our zeal for your house and your kingdom, a zeal which consumes us. We endure scorn and insults, even at times from members of our own family. The insults of those who insult you fall on us. Their scorn has broken our hearts and left us helpless. We looked for sympathy from them, but there was none. We looked for comforters, but found none. We pray that you will deal with those who hate us without cause. We pray that we may handle ourselves with integrity and Christ-likeness in crisis, so that those who hope in you will not be disgraced because of us. May those who seek you not be put to shame because of us, O Lord the Almighty. We continue to pray to you, O Lord, even though we are worn out and our throat is parched from calling for help. Our eyes fail looking for you. Yet in your great love, O God, we ask you to answer us with your sure salvation in the time of your favor. Please rescue us from the mire. Do not let us sink. Deliver us from those who hate us and have plunged us into deep waters. Do not let the floodwaters engulf us or the depths swallow us up. Answer us, O Lord, out of the goodness of your love. Turn to us in your great mercy. Do not hide your face from your servants, but answer us quickly, for we are in trouble. Come near and rescue us and redeem us. We trust in you, the Lord who hears the needy and does not despise his captive people. We will praise your name in song and glorify you with thanksgiving. We know this will please you more than sacrifice. May the poor see and be glad. May the hearts of those who seek you live. May heaven and earth praise you, the sea and all that move in them. We pray that you will save our people and rebuild our cities. May they be filled with those who love your name. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, speaking of God, I've got a little excerpt from President Trump's Easter greeting. I think you are going to like this. So let's go right into that. This is the Easter greeting that Donald Trump gave from the White House. Let's listen.
My fellow Americans, at this holy time of the year, families across our nation gather in homes, churches, and synagogues to light candles and to praise God. During the sacred holiday of Passover, Jewish families around the world give thanks to God for liberating the Jewish people from bondage in Egypt and delivering them to the promised land of Israel. For Christians, we remember the suffering and death of God's only Son and his glorious resurrection on the third day. On Easter Sunday, we proclaim with joy, Christ is risen. Both of these sacred celebrations remind us that God's love redeems the world. Almost 3,000 years ago, the prophet Isaiah wrote, "Darkness covers the earth, but the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. For the Lord will be your everlasting light." In America, we look to the light of God to guide our steps. We trust in the power of the Almighty for wisdom and strength. And we praise our Heavenly Father for the blessings of freedom and the gift of eternal life. Happy Passover, happy Easter. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
You know, we frequently have prayed over the past 8 or 9 years. We frequently have prayed for a leader of this country, a president who would acknowledge God, who would acknowledge his dependence upon God, who would acknowledge our dependence as a people upon God, who would recognize that it's not the might of our armies that saves us, but the mighty right arm of God, a president who would recognize who Jesus Christ is. And that's what we have right here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm not saying Donald Trump is perfect. I'm not saying anything of the sort, but I'm saying you listen to his words. Here's a man, and listen to how he describes Christ in this. This is just music to my ears. For Christians, we remember this weekend the suffering and death of God's only Son. Now, notice President Trump doesn't say the suffering and death of the one whose people think is God's only Son. It's just a simple declaration of fact. We remember the suffering and death of God's only Son and his glorious resurrection on the third day. Again, that's just a declaration of fact. Not some people think he rose from the dead, just declaring we celebrate his resurrection from the dead. On Easter Sunday, yesterday was the day, we proclaim with joy, Christ has risen. So here is our president, leader of our country, acknowledging that Christ died and that he rose again, and that we celebrate that on Easter Sunday. That, ladies and gentlemen, is some really, really good news. All right, well, let's turn our attention to some other things. I want to start by talking about this immigration issue briefly. And Rob, I don't know, I didn't have a chance to review. Would you? Okay, yeah. We got clip number 2. Have that one ready to roll. Now, Donald Trump is aware of this. I don't know how many Americans are, but there is an illegal alien army that is marching on America right now as you and I speak. Most of them are Hondurans. Most of them are males. I mean, you're going to hear the mainstream media refer to them as men, women, and children. Most of them are males between the ages of 18 and like 35 or 18 and 40. Most of them from Honduras. They're from Central America. They're not from Mexico. And there's about 1,500 of them. And they have been marching on foot from Honduras all the way through Mexico. And they're illegal alien trespassers in Mexico. And Mexico is not doing a single solitary thing to stop them. In fact, municipalities all across Mexico are helping them to move along, to get them to America. This is an army, and they're all going to arrive. All 1,500 of them are going to arrive at the same time on our southern border, and they are intending to invade America. Come right in. They're counting on us to give asylum to them and all that kind of stuff. This figure has 1,200. I've heard 1,000, heard 1,500. This is from a man by the name of Nicholas Medina Mora. Follow the great A. Flores as he accompanies a caravan of 1,200 Central American migrants as they cross Mexico all the way to the U.S. It's a literal army, ladies and gentlemen, of migrants from a number of countries, principally Honduras, as I mentioned. And this is a potential national security crisis for the United States on our southern border. Now, this is for 5 or 6 days now. Hundreds of Central Americans, children, women, and men, most from Honduras, this is a quote from the article, have boldly crossed immigration checkpoints, military bases, and police in a desperate, sometimes chaotic march toward the United States, despite their being in Mexico without authorization, which being translated means they're illegal aliens. Not one effort has been made to stop them. The caravan is intended to help migrants safely reach the United States, bypassing not only authorities who would seek to deport them, but gangs and cartels who are known to assault vulnerable travelers. Now, they're hoping that American authorities, quote, will grant them asylum, or for some to be absent when they attempt to cross the border illegally. So they're hoping that Border Patrol will just recede into the American desert so they can cross the border without any opposition. Nobody is doing anything to slow this thing down. The BuzzFeed reporter who's following this said that Mexican towns and cities are actually hurrying them along. Adolfo Flores, this is a tweet from him. The municipality we're at now is offering buses to get us. Notice how he identifies himself with these illegal aliens, offering buses to get us to the next town. It's been happening at several stops. I imagine they're more interested in getting people out of their public squares. In other words, they don't want these illegal aliens in their towns any more than we do. So they're just where we are. They don't want the illegal alien presence in their communities any more than we do. Let's see. Border Patrol Council Chairman or Union Chief Brandon Judd said that migrants in the caravan are taking advantage of U.S. laws. He says, first off, you've got a Mexican government entity that is assisting these individuals that are coming to the United States. These individuals do not have passports or legal documents to be in Mexico. Yet you got an agency that's helping them get to our U.S. border. Now, Trump yesterday, so fed up with Mexico, fed up with the Democrats for not doing a deal on DACA, said DACA is off the table. That's done. We're finished with that. That program is over. Not going to extend it. If they're here illegally, they can expect to be sent back home. And again, went after Mitch McConnell on the fake-a-buster, which Mitch McConnell, again, I think is going to ignore. But Donald Trump saying emphatically, no more DACA deal. That puppy is finished. If you're here illegal, no matter when you were brought here, no matter by whom, you're going to have to return to your home neighborhood. Now, what Trump complained about also is a lot of these Democrat laws, ridiculous Democrat laws like catch and release, where they get apprehended, but they can't be detained because of laws passed under Barack Obama and the Democrats. So anyway, Trump threatening to dismantle NAFTA in order to do something about this situation. Now here is Donald Trump. He was caught outside the church where he was going to attend Easter services. Reporter asks him about the situation with Mexico. Here's what he had to say.
Mexico has got to help us at the border. If they're not going to help us at the border, it's a very sad thing between two countries. Mexico has got to help us at the border. And a lot of people are coming in because they want to take advantage of DACA. And we're going to have to really see. They had a great chance. The Democrats blew it. They had a great chance, but we'll have to take a look. But Mexico has got to help us at the border. They flow right through Mexico. They send it to the United States. Can't happen that way anymore. Thank you.
So that Donald Trump can't happen that way anymore. DACA is done. You know, the governor of California is trying to he's pardoning illegal aliens who were scheduled for deportation. One on a felony weapons charge to protect them from deportation so that their legal record is wiped clean no matter what felonies they've committed, in the hopes that he can save them and protect them from deportation. And Donald Trump, of course, ripped into him for trying to evade the law. Focal Point American Family Radio will be right back. Stay with us.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. I want to talk to you about Easter, the resurrection, and my personal faith journey. Every Christian has at least one great sermon to preach, and that is the sermon that says, "Let me tell you my personal story of how Jesus changed my life and what Jesus has done for me personally." It's your personal testimony. In God's providence, I was born into a home with a Christian mother who from my earliest memories taught me that God loved me, Jesus died for me, and God had a wonderful plan for my life. My father was not a Christian. In fact, he became one shortly after I did, thanks to his attendance at a Billy Graham crusade at Rice Stadium in Houston, Texas. I have always been terribly grateful to Dr. Graham that because of his ministry, I grew up in a Christian home with a Christian dad. I came to a personal understanding that I was a sinner in need of salvation when I was 6.5 years old. I trusted Jesus as my Savior and his suffering and sacrifice on the cross for my sins, and I invited him into my heart. It is easier to come with the faith of a child when you're a child. Did I understand everything on that long ago Palm Sunday morning in that Baptist church in Houston? No. In fact, I don't understand everything now, but I understood enough. I knew that I did things I shouldn't do, that I said things I shouldn't say, and thought things I shouldn't think. And Jesus loved me enough to come and die on a cross for me. So the next Sunday, Easter Sunday, I was baptized by immersion, buried with him, and resurrected to newness of life in Christ Jesus. Since that long ago Easter Sunday, there have been many times when I unfortunately have not been everything he would have me to be, but there's never been a single moment when Jesus has not been everything he promised he would be and more. And the bonus was he called me to the glorious privilege of preaching the gospel, the good news that Jesus saves. Thank you for letting me tell you what Jesus has done for me. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's
Brian Fisher is my name. Program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. Glad to have you along on the American Family Radio Network. I want to stick with the immigration issue just for a few more minutes. Donald Trump again issued a challenge to Mitch McConnell and the Senate to go nuclear to get rid of this fake-a-buster. Ladies and gentlemen, this fake-a-buster, it's just ridiculous. It is absurd. And Mitch McConnell is the leading absurdist. He is clinging to this thing. There is no rational reason whatsoever to keep the 60-vote threshold in the Senate. It's a rule. It's an arbitrary rule. It was made up by the Senate. They can get rid of it any day they want. They could convene this afternoon and get rid of it by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It could be gone. By the way, it's what is it now on Pacific time? It's about 11:30 Western Central Time. Mountain Time, it would be 12:30. Caesar's Pizza, they made a promise that if a 16 seed beat a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, they would give everybody a free pizza. Well, today's the day. They're making good on their promise. You can go to Little Caesars. You get 4 pieces of their deep dish pepperoni pizza, 20-ounce Pepsi, free because University of Maryland, Baltimore County beat Virginia, the number 1 seed. Anyway, I just noticed the clock. So you got about 27 minutes to cash in on your free pizza.
So us in the Central Time and Eastern Time, we're
toast.
Okay.
It's 1:33, so we missed the boat on that puppy. Anyway, this. And ladies and gentlemen, here is the deal. We are going to have to be the ones that keep the pressure up on Mitch McConnell and the Senate. We have to keep pounding this. We have to keep emphasizing it in our communications with them. We need to call their offices and remind them of this to get rid of the 60-vote threshold. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the law. It's a Senate rule, purely arbitrary. They can cashier that thing, get rid of it anytime they want, and they need to do it post-haste, because it's gumming up every good piece of legislation that comes down the pike, every single one. There's not one good piece of legislation that can make it through the Senate right now because the Democrats, all it takes is 9 Democrats to stop a good piece of legislation. And you can't find 9 Democrats who will vote for a good piece of legislation anywhere on planet Earth. They're going to stand together and oppose everything the Republicans want to do, everything that Trump wants to do, they are going to flatly oppose. So everything is at a complete dead standstill, and the only way you can get something like a budget through, like we had last week, is for the Republicans and Donald Trump to cave. I mean, to fold like a cheap Bedouin tent in a stiff desert breeze, which is what President Trump did. He caved. He folded like a cheap Bedouin tent in a stiff desert breeze. And all the Republicans in Congress folded right along with him. And the reason is they had to get 60 votes in the Senate. So they had to come up with some kind of monstrosity of a budget bill that Democrats could agree on. So this is much more of a Democrat budget than a Republican budget. And don't forget, Chuck Schumer's out there bragging, hey, we got more in this budget deal. We got more as the minority than when we were in the majority and had the White House. I mean, they are doing the happy dance on national TV, him and Nancy Pelosi doing the happy dance because they got more out of this than they got when they were in charge. That's how completely collapsed the Republicans were. They folded like a cheap accordion at a Lawrence Welk concert. So, and it happens because of this cotton-picking fake-a-buster. So we have got to do, I mean, it's going to be up to us. They're not going to do it on their own unless they get so much pressure from the American people, unless they hear from us. They're just going to keep right on doing this and blocking every good piece of legislation that comes down the pike. So Trump was hitting Mitch McConnell on this yesterday. Heard from the executive producer, by the way, that I need to concentrate on staying calm. So here I am. Here I am going to my happy place. Okay, I'm fine. President Trump urged the U.S. Senate to change its rules Monday in order to pass funding for his proposed wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. So again, and the call is to go nuclear on that fake-a-buster. I call it a fake-a-buster because it's fake, it's phony, it's made up. You know, the border union chief is saying one of the reasons that the Trump effect is draining away is because the agencies of the United States government have not followed their president and his vision. Remember, he is the chief executive officer of the United States. Everybody in the executive branch works for him. And here's the article from CNS News featuring National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd. He said, frankly, we have to follow through on President Trump's rhetoric. The Border Patrol in 2017, we saw these huge drops, and the Border Patrols, they affectionately call it the Trump effect when the illegal immigration declined. Well, that Trump effect is now gone because the agencies and the Obama holdovers, they haven't followed through on his vision. The Republicans control the House and the Senate. They do not need the Democrat support to pass any laws they want. They can go nuclear option just like they did on confirmation. They need to pass laws and end the catch and release program. Now, if Congress fails to fulfill Trump's vision, he says this is going to happen. They're going to create havoc and chaos. I mean, how many times do we have to hear stories of United States citizens being killed by people who are here illegally before we actually do something? So the point there is this is not an incidental thing that Donald Trump refuses, or that Mitch McConnell refuses to abolish the fake-a-buster. It's not incidental. American people are dying because they are keeping that thing in place. You know, and things are worse. April 1, that's the day. That was yesterday. That was yesterday. California, let me get to the key takeaway here. On April 1, the state of California began to automatically register illegal aliens who have driver's licenses to vote. And this new law immunizes illegals against any state criminal penalty for registering and voting. And remember, there are more illegal aliens that live in California than anywhere else. And they allow illegal aliens to get driver's licenses. They've been doing that for who knows how long. Now they are automatically registering them to vote. When they go get a driver's license, they automatically get registered to vote, even though it is flatly illegal for them to do it. So California is just brazenly breaking federal law. This is like we're watching a slow motion secession here.
Yeah.
California is slowly seceding from federal law and from the federal government. There isn't a single solitary federal law now that they seem disposed to obey or to follow or to uphold. Now that voting is gone, they're going to allow illegal aliens to vote. And I guarantee you, when you get to election time, I mean, they're going to be canvassing, the Democrats are going to be canvassing these minority neighborhoods where illegal aliens are concentrated, and they are going to be busing them to the polls to vote for the Democrats. So that's going on. That started yesterday, so we're in slow motion secession by California. Now, Israel knows what to do. Got a couple of sound bites I want to get to, but let me read this story first. This is from Reuters. Israel said on Monday it has scrapped a plan to deport African migrants to Africa and has reached instead an agreement with the UN Refugee Agency to send more than 16,000 to Western countries instead. So that's the deal. They were going to send them back to Africa, which is their home continent, but now they're going to send them to Canada, Italy, and Germany. Apparently, these countries have agreed to take these illegal alien immigrants into their country. So again, Israel ready to send them back home, and the United Nations, in all of its wisdom, said, no, we'll take them. We'll find them a home in the West, which is already drowning in illegal aliens. Well, let's go to clip number 3. This is Chris Wallace talking to Brad Sherman, who is a Democrat from California, about the citizenship question that's going to go into the census in 2020. Are you a citizen of the United States? And Democrats have been hooting and hollering about this, stomping their feet, trying to get this pulled from the census. Here's our conversation.
Congressman Sherman, you have said that Washington is violating the Constitution by putting this citizenship question in, but isn't California violating the Constitution by interfering with the federal government, which has supremacy when it comes to matters of immigration?
Chris, we need comprehensive immigration reform. Until we get it, we'll be pulling our society apart.
Sir, you're not answering my question.
I'll get okay, California is absolutely within its rights. And California has sued the Trump administration 29 times, and we haven't lost once. The states and the federal government share sovereignty in our federal system. That's why Obamacare couldn't force the states to expand Medicaid, even though that's a federal program.
And in fact, when Arizona went further than the President Obama did, the Supreme Court said that they had overstepped their bounds. Under the supremacy clause, the federal government, what they say on immigration goes, and aren't you violating that?
Federal government establishes immigration policy, but whether California employees are going to spend California money and resources to help enforce that policy is a California decision. We will win that in court, and if the federal government can't compel states to participate in Medicaid, it can't compel states to become law enforcement authorities on immigration.
Of course, the Constitution didn't say anything about Medicaid, which didn't happen until the 1960s. It said something very specifically about immigration.
You know, when you think about this, what Brad Sherman is saying, hey, we get to decide to enforce it if we want. So just because it's a federal law doesn't mean we have to enforce it. We got a choice. Do we enforce it or not? Think about if we use that same argument. You know, in Idaho, I led the effort to amend our state constitution to prohibit sodomy-based marriage. We won 63% of the vote, 63-37, slam dunk. Passed both houses of our state legislature by more than 75% of the vote. So imagine we said, okay, we're going to decide whether to enforce that Supreme Court decision or not. We've decided we're not going to enforce it. On same-sex marriage, we're not going to enforce it. We're going to stick with our constitutional amendment, and we're going to define marriage as a union, one man and one woman, and we are not going to bow to the knee of the Supreme Court in this deal. This Brad Sherman guy would be hollering. He would be stomping his foot, turning red in the face, calling for the National Guard to invade Idaho and compel them to recognize federal authority in this deal. But here he's insisting they've got the right to do it. You know, and Chris Wallace is exactly right. There is nothing in the Constitution that allows a state to make up the rules for immigration. Now, originally they could. For the first 20 years of the Union, they got to decide who came in and who came out of their states. Section 9 of Article 1, the migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808. So until 1808, immigration was the province of the state governments. After 1808, it is the province of the federal government. Be right back.
You guys are doing a great work here, and I've seen lots of influences in my own life.
We're collecting stories of how God is using American Family Radio.
It inspires me to fight the good fight of faith.
Would you take a moment to share your story? These brief stories serve as big encouragement to those who partner with us financially and to those who are considering partnering with us. Phone 877-876-8893. That's 877-876-8893.
You can be among the first to receive updates about changes and special events coming up in our programming, and always keep up with the things you might have missed with American Family Radio's weekly newsletter. Every Friday, you'll receive an email with a recap of the week's highlights from your favorite broadcasts, as well as important information about special programs in the near future. Go to afr.net to sign up today and never miss another update. Add yourself to our mailing list and stay in the loop at afr.net.
Hey, I'm Brant. Maybe you've heard me talking about MediShare, but now I give you my friend Sherry.
Yes, I have loved MediShare. Loved it.
Is that all you have to say? Because this will be really short.
No, I really do love it. I've saved hundreds a month. And overall, I just think it's a better choice of a healthcare program for me. I'm really happy with it. And honestly, normally, I don't even like talking about this stuff.
Nobody does.
But MediShare is different. MediShare members share each other's healthcare bills. We pray for each other. It's a not-for-profit, so we all save money.
True. Tell them about the thing.
What thing?
The online thing.
Oh, yeah, I used that the other night. MediShare members can now access a doctor online 24/7. You can get a prescription for the flu or something just that fast.
So MediShare can save you hundreds a month. You get to be part of the community. You get a huge network of doctors and providers to choose from.
It's all pretty awesome.
It's all pretty awesome.
It's all pretty awesome.
The final verdict from Jerry. So call 855-SALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-SALM-23.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Number to call if you want to join in the conversation about immigration, about Donald Trump's policy. If you'd like to weigh in on Donald Trump's Easter address, which I thought was absolutely fabulous, you're welcome to do so. Let's play a couple of them, and the number is 888-589-8840, by the way, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Now, here is Tucker Carlson talking to Cesar Vargas, who is an undocumented immigrant attorney. He is an illegal alien, and he's a practicing attorney in New York. That's how far gone New York is on issues of immigration. The guy's not even legally present in the United States and is allowed to represent people in court. So here is the first of their exchanges. Let's listen.
I do believe that we should have universal voting for everyone to ensure that everyone has
for citizens of other countries. So, like, so Putin should be able to vote here.
No taxation without representation. I believe that. That's a fundamental of this nation, isn't it?
Who comes to the United States and buys a deck of Marlboros and pays a sales tax is entitled to vote. That's what you're saying.
If that person comes here to contribute to the country, let him have a say in his government. Simple as that.
Let foreigners vote. I hope the Democratic Party runs on that. I think it'd be a fun election. The details matter. So you said that non-citizens should never vote in elections. I would argue that your party will overtake you on that question soon, but we'll see.
Well, if that, maybe if Congress never does anything to address immigration.
Would any other country tolerate that? Would that idea be taken seriously any place but in the United States? Mexico doesn't take it seriously. In fact, the Mexican Constitution explicitly says, quote, foreigners shall not in any way involve themselves in the political matters of the country. Nobody's attacking Mexico for that. Mexico's not being denounced as racist for not letting Salvadorans vote, because it's obvious only Mexicans should dictate Mexican politics. That's why Mexico's a country. Only in the United States is there a different standard, and it's because the left sees the new standard as a way to obtain power and hold it forever.
All right, so that the second voice was Jennifer Palmieri, former spokesman for the Clinton administration. And I'll tell you what this is interesting what it reveals about the Democratic Party, don't miss the significance of this. The Democratic Party has given up trying to persuade American citizens that their policies are better for this country. They've given up. What they're going for now is getting illegal aliens into the country, getting them registered to vote, and then using that as their bulldozer to take control of American public policy. They've given up trying to persuade American voters that they've got the best policies. They've given up on that. They can't compete with Republican ideas, and they know it. And so now they're going to try to do it by getting illegal aliens to vote. All right, well, let's go to the phones. 888-589-8840. Let's begin with Heather in Bennington, Kansas. Heather, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian. Thanks for letting me come on.
You bet.
Okay. Well, here is the thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that we are, everybody's up in arms about the citizen question on the U.S. Census. Well, what I'm finding is that every time I've ever filled out an employment application, they've always asked me, do I have a right to work here? Is that now going to be illegal?
Well, I mean, that's just part of the law. You have to be legally in this country to be able to work in this country. But see, again, this goes back to what I was saying. The Democrats do not want a citizenship question on the census because they are afraid, I mean, their worry is that it's going to prevent illegal aliens from being counted in the census, which means they admit that there's a whole lot of illegal aliens here that aren't entitled to vote. They're not entitled to benefits. They're not entitled to welfare, subsidized housing, free medical, free education, all that kind of stuff. And they just they want to minimize the number of people that even know that or understand that. That's why they're anxious to keep that citizenship question off the ballot, because they know that I don't know how to put this. It's just kind of dawning on me as we're talking about this. They're recognizing that their constituency, let me put it this way, their primary constituency are illegal aliens. That's where they are looking for their power base. Their power base are those that are in this country illegally. You know, you're asking the right question there, Heather. Will that kind of a question be illegal? You no longer be able to ask if somebody's got the legal right to work in this country. They want to get rid of all that kind of stuff. They want to erase distinctions between illegal and legal immigrants. All right, Heather, good question. Thank you for that. Let's grab a call from Charles in Lewisburg, West Virginia. What's on your mind, Charles?
Hello,
Talk to
Brian.
me. Howdy.
Hello, Brian.
Hey.
Who won the Giants game last night?
You know, I don't even know, to tell you the truth. Do you know?
I fell asleep.
All right, well, listen, I'll tell you what. While we're on that topic, I can tell you who won on Friday night.
Yeah, I know. I watched that game.
Okay, well, here's the soundbite that'll bring it back to you. This is the top of the ninth inning. Giants against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Joe Panic. I love this kid. Steps to the plate. Let's listen.
Panic, a left-handed hitter, stands in. Jansen, the big right-hander.
Panic hits a high drive to right. Puig is back. Out of here.
Adios, pelota! Joe Panic strikes again. There have been 2 runs in the 2 games of this series, 1 in each game for the Giants on a Joe Panic home run. And can you believe that? Not Posey, not McCutchen, not Longoria, not Pence, not one of the big power hitters, but Joe Panic.
Well, there you go, Charles. Joe Panic. They won the first 2 games 1-0 over the Dodgers. That's the first time in decades that a team opened its season with 2 1-0 wins, and in both cases, the 1 run came from a Joe Panic home run. Anyway, thank you, Charles, for indulging me. Thank you for queuing me up for that.
Brian.
Yes, sir.
I have one more question.
Hit me.
How does the 10th Amendment apply to California regarding this illegal alien stuff and the subject you just breached before the break?
Okay, well, let's take a quick look at the wording of the 10th Amendment, and that'll make it clear to everybody. Here's what the 10th Amendment says. The powers not delegated to the United States, that's the federal government, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So if a power is not delegated, not assigned to the federal government, then it's reserved to the states or the people. But we have just seen that the power to control immigration, the migration of persons, that is delegated in our Constitution to the central government. Therefore, California has no right to disobey that law or ignore it.
There you go.
All right, Charles. Listen, thank you. That's a great question. Appreciate that very much. And thanks again to Charles for setting up that Giants replay. I didn't know when I was going to sneak that one in. Let's go to Essence in Temple, Texas. Essence, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, permission to come aboard, sir.
Permission granted.
Thank you. I just wanted to say this fast. Can't President Trump call Americans for a militia to protect our border and, like the National Guard, only a regulated citizen force? And can't those same people block rogue judges from entering courthouses?
Well, that's interesting. I know, the question of what we do with the borders came up over the weekend. Let's grab clip number 6, because Donald Trump talked about this thing, about the borders, and you were bringing up the idea of the National Guard or even the military having a role in this. And I think Donald Trump is exactly right. Donald Trump thinks that there may be a role for the military in this. Let's listen.
In recent years, Americans have watched as Washington spent trillions and trillions of dollars building up foreign countries while allowing our own country's infrastructure to fall into a state of total disrepair. Look at Korea. We have a border at Korea. We have a wall of soldiers. We don't get paid very much for this, do we? You look at that, nobody comes through. But our own border, we don't take care of it. Think of it. We spend billions of dollars in other countries maintaining their borders, and we can't maintain our borders in our own country. Is there something a little bit wrong with that? Think of it. We spend billions and billions of dollars. Look, North and South Korea. 32,000 soldiers, their finest equipment, barbed wire all over the place. We protect that whole thing. Nobody comes through, but our country, we don't do it.
And in essence, to your question, I think that Donald Trump is onto something here. This illegal army invasion that's coming from Honduras, an invasion of 1,500 illegal aliens. It's not immigration, that's an invasion. Our military ought to be sent to the border to stop that cold, because that's an invasion. And that's part of their responsibility of the military, to protect the safety and security of American citizens in the United States of America. Time that they do that. Donald Trump makes a good point. A lot of people don't know we have 32,000 soldiers on the border between South Korea and North Korea. Nobody gets through that thing. Remember when that guy made it from North Korea and escaped to South Korea? One guy in the last decade. And he became an international story. One guy getting across that border because our military has sewn it up. If they can do it in Korea, they can do it in the United States. Great question, Essence. I appreciate it. Let's grab a quick call from Fred in Fitzgerald, Georgia. Fred, welcome. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Brian?
Good.
Hey, listen, I've got an idea. Now, California wants to be so radical, and the Democrats want to do what they're doing. Couldn't Donald Trump use an executive power and basically bring in the Border Patrol to California and round up every one of them and do it through the Division of Licensing?
Division of Licensing. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I don't know exactly about that approach, Fred, but they can go in there. In fact, the Border Patrol, ICE agents are going into California, and they're making raids. They go after individual illegal aliens that have a criminal record. Some of them have a deportation order they've been ignoring. They go in there and they grab them right in the cities. California cannot stop them from doing that. And so he's doing that already. We need to step that up. All right, John in Fayetteville, Arkansas. John, I got about 15 seconds, man. Hit me with your best shot.
I just wanted to let you know, 10 years ago, I wanted to go to Mexico to work for the company I work for here. But I could not go because I was going to have to pay $2,000 immigration fee to go into Mexico.
All right, John, I'm sorry I'm completely out of time, but you're making the point. We'll be back right after the news. Stay with us.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
American Family Coffee is coffee with a cause. Not only is it a delicious way to start your day, but it can also wake you up to the idea of supporting the American Family Association through a product you'd normally buy anyway. Choose from morning blend, evening blend, and everything in between. Get your American Family Coffee and support the American Family Association at afastore.net.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. A Texas man who as a teenager was sentenced to probation for killing 4 people in a drunk driving wreck is out of jail. Ethan Couch only went to jail for violating his probation and running to Mexico, but his lawyer originally told the judge his affluent parents spoiled him to the point that he couldn't appreciate what he did. Eben Brown has more.
Ethan Couch's defense attorney once told a judge he suffered from affluenza, a term that became the punchline of many talk show jokes and internet memes. Couch was 16 when he went on a bender, ending in a traffic crash that killed 4 people. The attorney said the teen didn't understand right from wrong because his rich parents didn't raise him right. Couch was let off with probation and a warning to stay away from alcohol, but he was seen on online videos drinking again. Instead of facing justice, his mother ran with him to Mexico. Upon capture, he was sent to jail for 2 years, the maximum he could face at the time. Eben Brown, Fox News.
A border enforcement group is pleased that a federal judge did the right thing in dismissing a class action challenge to President Trump's travel ban. Chad Groening has more.
The Washington Times reports that a federal judge, who has been a thorn in the side of the Trump administration, recently reversed course and ruled that she could not force the State Department to grant visa lottery approvals to would-be immigrants from Iran and Yemen, who won the visa lottery during fiscal year 2017. Judge Tanya Chutkan said that the government had managed to run out the clock on would-be immigrants from Yemen and Iran, and there is no longer anything she can do to preserve their pathway to immigration. Ira Melman is a spokesman for the Federation for American Immigration Reform. For one thing, he says the visa lottery should be completely abolished.
Visa lottery needs to go because it's just plain stupid policy. The idea that we're going to pick 50,000 people out of a hat as a way of bringing people to the country, it just doesn't make any sense. The whole thing needs to be scrapped. The family chain migration system, the visa lottery system, and replaced with a merit-based system.
And Melman says the specific question of whether to allow immigrants from places like Iran and Yemen is a legitimate concern.
The case that she ruled on was from 2017, and people who had won the lottery in 2017 and couldn't take advantage of that. Essentially, it seems that the judge said that boat has sailed. Moving forward, we ought to take people based on our ability to ensure that we can do adequate background checks. We've seen ample evidence that the system has huge flaws.
But Melman says the agencies tasked with doing background checks have high confidence that they can adequately vet these individuals. I'm Chad Groening.
It's just a phase. That's how one fundraising expert assesses the lack of giving by church-going millennials. Bill Bumpus explains.
Trent Dunham of Dunham & Company says that right now millennials are not strong givers, but he attributes that to their current life phase. He says in the early to mid-1980s, there was a study that said baby boomers were the least generous generation, especially compared to the greatest generation. But now we know that the boomers have actually been the most generous generation that we can track. What made the difference? Well, it was their life phase.
When you compare that to where the millennials are today, the millennials are where the boomers were back then, where they're just starting their careers. A lot of them have young families. They have very little discretionary income to kind of play with, but I don't think there's a correlation between generosity as much as there's a correlation between life phase.
Dunham says another thing churches must keep in mind is that millennials are much more inclined to give to vision, purpose, and impact rather than institutions like boomers were wired to give to.
So it is imperative and incumbent upon the pastor and the church leadership to really help the congregation understand the why behind what we do and the impact of what we do. You've got to really make that clear to the congregation.
Dunham says he has hope in the future of giving to the church and the funding of God's work. I'm Bill Bumpus.
And finally, the Supreme Court says that car dealerships are not required under federal law to pay overtime to their service advisors, the employees that greet customers and assess their service and repair needs. The case is important to the more than 18,000 dealerships in the U.S. who employ more than 100,000 service advisors. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Who is God? What is He like? How can we know? Your answer to these questions will impact your worship, discipleship, apologetics, and evangelism. Learn from Ravi Zacharias, Josh McDowell, Chip Ingram, and more than 60 other speakers at Southern Evangelical Seminary's 25th Annual National Conference on Christian Apologetics. It's October 12th and 13th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Homeschool and other discounts are available. Save more when you register by May 1st at ses.edu.
In recent years, Americans have watched as Washington spent trillions and trillions of dollars building up foreign countries while allowing our own country's infrastructure to fall into a state of total disrepair. Look at Korea. We have a border at Korea. We have a wall of soldiers, but our own border, we don't take care of it. Think of it. We spend billions of dollars in other countries maintaining their borders, and we can't maintain our borders in our own country.
Mexico has got to help us at the border.
I do believe that we should have universal voting for everyone.
People who do contribute and are great people and contributing should be allowed to vote. So maybe
okay, so that would include
voting,
good. Well, I'm glad we
well,
can give up on the Russian collusion narrative.
California has sued the Trump administration 29 times.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Hi, welcome back to the second hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Focal Point is the name of the program, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. And you are listening to high-definition radio, more content per cubic inch of air than any other place on your radio dial, assuming you still have a radio dial. And we were talking about this morning when our staff met. We meet for devotions every morning, and the topic of transistor radios came up. Because Tim, our boss, was talking about being a kid and listening to the St. Louis Cardinals play baseball on the radio on a transistor radio, and I did the same thing when I was a kid.
Me too.
We used to play home run derby in the backyard with wiffle ball bats,
Yeah.
and with wrapped up socks and stuff like that. And we'd listen to the Giants games on the radio, on a transistor radio. So anyway, Debbie listened to this program and others for the longest time on a transistor radio.
Really?
That we got back in California back in, I don't know, 1978 or something like that, and took it to Boise, used it for 29 years, brought it here, and it finally just went the way of all flesh. It was done. It was toast. So we go in to an electronics store. So Debbie and I go in the electronics store and say, hey, we'd like to pick up a transistor radio.
What?
And I have never seen a blanker look on the face of a human being. Just complete incomprehension. He said, "What is that? What is a transistor radio?" So anyway, it kind of dated ourselves on that one.
I saw that look on a lot of our young people's faces in devotion this morning when Tim says, "Y'all, I had transistor radio,"
what the heck
and
is
it was
that?
like, "What is that?
What are you talking about?" Anyway, want to turn our attention to a couple of other issues in this segment. Number one, I think we need to be aware, and I want to try to keep us abreast of this, the persecution of Christians around the world. And in Iraq right now, it's absolutely horrific. In fact, generally speaking, the persecution of Christians around the world is worse today probably than any other time in our history. And Iraq right now is the ground zero for the elimination of Christians from the pages of history. I think with Iraq, we were right to go in, wrong to stay. What have we done? We went in there. The idea is we were going to build a democracy. We're going to keep our soldiers in there to risk life and limb so that the Iraqis could build a democracy. And what's happened? Now what we've left behind is a government that is seeking to eliminate people of faith. What we should have done when we were there, go in there, neutralize Saddam, get rid of him, and then say to all the Christians in Iraq, We're going to leave. Now, we're telling the Iraqi people, you give us another Saddam, you do what he did, we're going to come back and we're going to bomb you back to the Stone Age. That's what we're telling them. But we're leaving. So to you Iraqi Christians, if you want to go to the United States, we will make refuge for you in the United States. We will see that you get there. We will give you safe passage to the border or to the coast so you can get on transport ships that we'll have for you. We will take you to safety in the United States where you can practice your Christianity freely. That's what we should have done, but we didn't. And sure enough, now the Great Repression, 81% apparently of all the Christians have disappeared from Iraq. They are just gone. There's basically a pogrom. You know, in Iraq, they require Christians to wear a scarlet letter. Like the Jews had to wear a yellow triangle in World War II. In Germany, they have to wear a purple or scarlet letter N. It's called Nun, the Hebrew alphabet. They have to wear that because Nun is the first letter in the word Nazarene. So it is just horrible, the situation that Christians, our Christian brothers and sisters, have to deal with in Iraq. There's no place for Christians, said Father Bios Kasha of the Church of Marios in Baghdad. We are seen as lambs to be killed at any time. Shiite militiamen discovered a mass grave with the bodies of 40 Christians near Mosul. Christians are kidnapped and killed by ISIS. And as parents, you know, as the Jews wore the yellow star, so they are made to wear the scarlet letter of Nun, which is the same sound that begins the word Nazarene. Now, some of these may have fled to other countries. It's possible that they're safe in an adjacent country. They could go to Iran, but things are worse there. They could go to Saudi Arabia. They're not going to last there. So they're just not there for whatever reason, whether they have managed to escape under cover of darkness to a neighboring country, or whether they simply have been eliminated, which is probably the logical solution. They are no longer there. They are gone. A new report by the Iraqi Human Rights Society also revealed that Iraqi minorities such as Christians, Yazidis, and Shabaks, I don't know what they are now victims of a slow genocide. So anyway, that's going on in Iraq, and I thought we all need to be aware of this. Now, one other item. This has to do with alternative lifestyles and why they're a really bad idea. You know, a lot of Christian adoption agencies, if I get anybody on the left, I know they're going to take issue with what I'm saying here. Listen to me today. But here's a story about a lesbian couple, both of them white. They adopted 6 black children, and apparently they intentionally drove off a California cliff at 90 miles an hour with all 8 of them in the van, and they're all dead. And there's a pretty pockmarked history of domestic violence with these 2 lesbians. And, you know, one of the things that's characteristic of the homosexual lifestyle is the rate of domestic violence is about 4 times what it is in married couples who are heterosexual, and about twice what it is in heterosexual couples that are cohabiting. In other words, the domestic violence rate among heterosexual couples is twice as bad in cohabiting couples than it is in married couples. There's something about going through the wedding ceremony, making the solemn vows in the presence of God, recognizing that God is a witness, friends are a witness. Something about that solidifies, and I believe there's a spiritual thing that happens as God unites these 2 people as one. So the domestic violence rate is twice as high in cohabiting couples as married couples, and it is 4 times as high in homosexual couples than it is among heterosexual couples that are married. This is one of the reasons why we never should adopt children into homosexual households. I will say it again, we never should adopt children into homosexual households. It's a form of child abuse. Now we've got 6 children who are dead because they were adopted into a lesbian household. And I won't go through the details here, but there's a history of domestic violence and abuse in this household. I mean, some of the older kids in this were like in their late teens in this family. So again, it just shows you what happens when you ignore the laws of nature and nature's God. You try to form families with lesbian or homosexual parents, it cannot happen. It's a form of child abuse. We've talked about that before. The studies that have been done, the longitudinal studies done with adults who grew up in homosexual households, so they're now able to look back on their childhood, take notice of the long-term effects, and there are 80 different categories in which they were measured in terms of outcomes. They did worse in 77 out of the 80. Couples that were raised in an intact home with a married mother and father, they did better in 80 or 77 out of the 80 categories. Back in 2.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
A bundle of middlemen are responsible for high drug prices. Arrangements between health plans, drug distributors and manufacturers, and drug management companies make it difficult for newer, less expensive drugs to be sold. Those who manufacture older, more expensive drugs make exclusive agreements with health plans that agree to cover only the older drugs in exchange for rebates and discounts, kickbacks, kept by the health plans. The FDA calls this a rigged payment system. In response, one health plan will pass some of the rebate back to patients to lower drug costs. Congress should repeal the law that allows these kickbacks. In the future, I'll talk about another key player in prices.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
Hey, my name's Brant. You ever make a change and then wonder, why didn't I do this a long time ago? That's what's happening for thousands of people with regard to their health care. They're joining Medishare, and then they're wondering, why didn't I already do this? For most members, it costs less than half what they were paying for their old health plan. There's a huge provider network, too. You can customize your plan, and this is awesome. Medishare members can go online with a doctor 24/7. So if you need a prescription for the flu or something, it's so convenient for you and your family. So yeah, this is one of those why did I wait on this things. And if you don't love your current health plan, you're not stuck with it. You can join Medishare anytime. By the way, to give you an idea, the typical savings for a family, about $500 a month. It just makes so much sense. Check it out. They're super easy to talk to. Call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. And Jeff, you were telling me that you had seen an article in homosexual publication.
Yeah, The Advocate.
The Advocate. That's one of the leading homosexual publications. And they, too, were raising concerns about domestic violence in homosexual households.
Yeah, I don't have the article open in front of me right now. But, yes, they were definitely quoting the Center for Disease Control and saying that this is a very serious issue amongst the LGBT community.
I just dug a little bit deeper into that article I had that talked about this lesbian couple had adopted 6 children, all of them black, and drove off a cliff at 75 miles. In fact, the speedometer was pinned at 90 miles an hour. And there was no signs of skid marks, no signs of braking, which would have been revealed by the black box or whatever the onboard computer was. So it was a deliberate thing. The woman who's driving deliberately drove this thing off a cliff to kill herself and her lesbian partner and the 6 kids that had been entrusted in their family. And again, I mentioned there's a history of domestic abuse here. Well before the wreck, Sarah Hart, one of the 2 lesbians, pleaded guilty in 2011 to a domestic assault charge in Douglas County, Minnesota, telling authorities, quote, she let her anger get out of control while spanking her 6-year-old adoptive daughter. And she made a plea deal that led to the dismissal of malicious punishment of a child charge. Now, last week, and this may be what led up to this horrific thing, her neighbors called state child protective services because one of the children of this lesbian couple, Devante, 15 years old, had been coming over to their house almost every day to ask for food. And what he told them, and this is a kid that had been pictured in tears back in 2014, hugging a white police officer during a protest in Portland, Oregon, over the shooting of a black man in Ferguson. Same boy, photographed in tears, hugging a white policeman in that protest. And what Devontae told the next-door neighbors is that his parents, these are the two lesbian women, were punishing the children, punishing them, not just him, but them, by withholding food. So he asked them if they would leave food in a box by the fence so that the two lesbian moms wouldn't find out. Now, social service authorities opened an investigation. A state caseworker went to the house last Friday but didn't find anyone home. Neighbors said they saw the couple and their 6 adopted children leave the home in a hurry shortly after not answering the door to the child services worker. The family's car spotted at the bottom of the cliff 3 days later. So it looks as if they got spooked, afraid that the jig was up, that their systematic abuse of their children was going to come to light, and so they ended it all for all of them.
I remember skimming through that story all along and through the weekend. I don't remember seeing much mention that it was a same-sex couple at all.
You know, I saw the headlines, family of 8 drives off cliff, looks like it's intentional. Parents and children die and crash at the bottom of a cliff. The media will do anything to bury the homosexual angle.
Yeah.
They just don't want people to know.
You got the impression it was two mothers coming home from soccer practice with their kids.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no mention of the details there.
Yeah. Well, and of course, no mention at all till you dig into this story that there was domestic abuse charge against one of the lesbian women, and now social services was investigating because the children apparently were being starved as a form of discipline. All right. Well, let's go to clip number 1. You might have heard the brouhaha about Laura Ingraham and the boycott of her advertisers. This young 17-year-old know-it-all. I can't think of a suitable term.
Young man.
Young, whatever. Yeah, I'll stay away from anything else.
Yeah.
But this 17-year-old kid, his last name is Hogg. David Hogg?
Yeah.
That's been all over the news. He's become a national celebrity. He's become a national star. Everybody is looking to him to be the fountain of wisdom when it comes to gun violence.
Yeah, not to be confused with Boss Hogg.
Boss Hogg,
no,
right.
It's a different guy altogether.
Different guy.
Just to clear that up.
You know, it's just absurd. You know, I've never played a single soundbite from him because I think it's beyond absurd to think that a 17-year-old kid has the wisdom to counsel America on what we ought to do about gun violence. So I just have not. I just haven't played any sound bites from him. I just don't think we ought to be led by the counsel of children. That's just a recipe for disaster. Children are supposed to be counseled by adults, not the other way around. So anyway, Laura Ingraham poked a little bit of fun at him for not getting into the colleges of his choice despite having a 4.2 GPA. And I've got another story in the stack. What did I do with that? A story about a kid who got accepted into 20 of the best colleges in America and got a full ride to all of them. See, his name is, what is his name? Michael Brown. He applied to Harvard, Princeton, Northwestern, Yale, University of Pennsylvania, Stanford, Georgetown, and Vanderbilt. And he had the advantage of being black. Don't think that doesn't cut some ice when you're looking at college admissions and scholarships. But I'm sure he had a great record. I mean, he got accepted by 20 colleges. He had to be an outstanding student in high school. But got a full ride to all 20 of the top schools in the country, while David Hogg couldn't get into any. So anyway, Laura Ingraham kind of took a little poke at him in a tweet. He fired back by calling for a boycott of a program. And now about 12 or 15 companies have indeed boycotted Laura Ingraham's program. Now, she's on vacation this week, took her kids to the coast apparently, said it was pre-planned, and it might have been pre-planned on Thursday night, so they would have a reason for her to be gone. You know, Bill O'Reilly took time off when he started to get into big trouble. And Laura Ingram's apologized for it. There's nothing else that she can do. But he refused to accept her apology. He put some kind of precondition. You got to do this or that before I will accept your apology. So anyway, the question here on Hot Air, is there a backlash brewing over sponsors fleeing? There's 129 companies that have run ads on Laura Ingram's program, and only 11 have boycotted. So maybe this thing is going to wind up kind of snapping back on the boycotters.
Hey, Brian, I have a question. I'm kind of curious. It makes me wonder why David Hogg brought this up at all about not being accepted into these colleges. Yeah. I mean, it did sound like he was kind of complaining that he wasn't being accepted, like the colleges that he was applying for have issue with left-wing activist people attending their schools. You know what I mean?
That was going to be a black mark on your college application. And of course the media lionized him for that, and they highlighted that you're changing the world, and they use profanity to describe these colleges. They wouldn't accept him, and I think that was his reason for doing it. He got turned down probably before all this Parkland stuff happened, and he wanted to shame these schools, one of them, into accepting him. What are we doing? We have to accept this kid. He's a future leader of America. He could be the president of the United States someday. So we'll see if any of that works. And speaking of, well, let's play. What's that? Okay, clip number 1. This is Brian Alka-Stelter from CNN. That's what you have to take after you watch this program. He's their media guru. But anyway, he's kind of sympathetic here to Laura Ingraham, as well he should be, because CNN is vulnerable. Their numbers are in the tank. And so here's what he had to say about whether the approach that the boycotters are taking is the right move.
Are ad boycotts the right answer here? I'm personally pretty wary of this. I think it's dangerous to see these ad boycott attempts happening more and more often in this country. My view is, let's not shut down anyone's right to speak. Let's meet their comments with more speech. Let's try to respond that way.
Well, for a rare moment, I actually agree with Brian Stelter. Now, maybe the answer is not a boycott in this situation, but just more speech. And I think it's exactly what we were suspecting. I think is right, that I think he was, this David Hogg kid was trying to get enough public outcry that the public would put pressure on one of these schools to let him in. I think that was his big strategy, overall strategy. Let's see what I want to do next.
I know.
What?
Oh, we're just staying quiet because we don't want to be boycotted either. We're just saying. I can see Rob over there chewing on his lip.
I'm just being quiet.
Yeah.
Another issue. This is clip number 7. Another issue that we have dealt with frequently on this program is the way that the left misinterprets data. And one of the things that they do is, if there is a difference in numbers, they attribute it to discrimination. In other words, you have any comparison between whites and blacks, and more blacks, let's say, are the victim of suspensions in school or punishments in school, or they're incarcerated more frequently, they insist that this is an evidence of racism. It is racial bias. That can be the only explanation for it. But if you've got, say, if you have half of your prison population are minorities and they're only 13% of the population, what you have to look at is, well, what did they do? How does their record compare to the 50% of whites that are in the, and you find it's the same. So they're not being picked on. They're not being singled out for punishment. The reason there are a greater percentage of them incarcerated than represented in the population is because they commit crime at greater frequencies. The same reason they're disciplined more often in school. You look closely at the evidence. It's not that they're being discriminated against. It's not an evidence of racism. It's an evidence that they have been acting out more frequently than their white colleagues. All right, let's play clip number 7. Well, I guess we don't have time. Just ran. I barely got enough time, but we'll save that for right out of the break. Now, MSNBC does a kind of a startling thing in this next clip I'm going to play. We'll set it up and play it right after the break. This is the first time I've ever heard one of the cable networks admit the plain fact that if you look at the raw numbers, far more whites than blacks are killed in police shootings. If you were to just form an impression based on what you hear from the media, you would be convinced that far more blacks have been killed by cops than whites. That is like out of control. Well, we'll come back and see what MSNBC has to say about that after looking at the stats. Focal Point American Family Radio. Be right back.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
Hi, this is Abraham Hamilton III, and it really blows me away to hear how God is using the Hamilton Corner and all the other programs on American Family Radio. He's doing an amazing work here. That's why I'm glad to have an opportunity to ask you to partner with us financially during our 3-day share-a-thon starting Tuesday, April 17th.
My name is Amy. Blessings from Minnesota. When other people talk about needing their morning coffee, I just say I need my daily dose of the Holy Ghost, and that's AFR for me. You guys are amazing. I'm blessed daily. I love being informed, and I love to know how to pray.
God is using American Family Radio to inform, equip, and activate our listeners to strengthen the moral foundations of American culture. Please partner with us in this important effort during our 3-day share-a-thon beginning Tuesday, April 17th.
Thank you for being there for me every day. God bless everybody.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Welcome back. Brian Fisher is my name. Program is Focal Point. Let's grab clip number 7. This is MSNBC finally admitting something that's always been true, that more whites than blacks are killed in police shootings. Let's listen.
The raw numbers show 86 white people have been killed in police shootings since January 1st. That's about twice as many as blacks and almost 3 times as many as Hispanics. But it takes a sharp turn when you look deeper into those numbers, because those 86 white people killed make up about 34% of fatal police shootings, but 76% of the U.S. population is white. Meanwhile, 42 blacks killed by police make up more than 16% of fatal shootings. That's compared to being just over 13% of the population. And it all gets even more stark when you look at black men. The 39 black men killed in police-involved shootings, that's 15% of all deaths at the hands of police, despite black men being just over 6% of the population. That's a death rate almost 3 times more than their share of the U.S. population.
You know, and these statistics are just frankly meaningless. Yeah. I mean, they're meaningless all by themselves unless you look at each individual instance and find out, why did the police shoot this guy? What were the reasons for it? What was the nature of the circumstances? And you may find that in every one of those 86 cases where a white guy was shot, the police were justified. The guy was resisting arrest. He had a weapon on him. He was threatening cops. He was threatening a civilian. And maybe the same in the 42 cases where blacks were shot. So you have to look at each one of those situations individually before you make up your mind about whether there is a real disparity or not. Back to this shooting of Parkland High School, or Parkland, Florida, the high school in Parkland, Florida. The students there, this David Hogg I mentioned, he's getting all the attention. He's somebody nicknamed him Camera Hogg. He's been on national network all the time, and he's speaking. He's attempting to speak, or presuming to speak, for the entire student body. And a lot of students are telling their teachers, "Look, that guy does not speak for me." This is a story at IJR.com. There are nearly 3,000 students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, but they are being represented by a small handful of progressive students with the large megaphone of the national media. One teacher at the high school said they don't speak for all their peers. The teacher told NRA spokesman Dana Lash students have talked to her privately about the shooting in February. And I've had students approach me privately to talk to me about it. I should note that these student activists, none of them were ever in any danger doing this whole thing, except one student, one girl, Samantha Fuentes. I have students in my class that were shot, but you don't see them. They have the most personal experience of anyone except for that one girl, and nobody is speaking for them. And she said none of the students that she has spoken with support this David Hogg. They have told me word for word, as well as paraphrasing, that these kids don't speak for all students. And the Parkland students are not happy with the environment they've come back to. School just opened up again today, on Monday, and they're feeling like they're returning to a prison rather than to a school. There are strict security measures which are intended to protect them from another mass shooting, but they're looking at metal detectors, which they don't have up yet. But they've got perimeter security measures. They're now allowing anonymous reporting of students who are displaying aberrant or dangerous behavior. That's bound to be a troublemaker for making threats and so forth. They have school-specific ID cards to help detect unauthorized persons. And they're looking at metal detectors. They feel like they're returning to prison rather than to school. Now, one interesting thing is there was another group of students at Rockledge High School in Central Florida. They staged a protest Friday for gun rights, for Second Amendment rights. They took a walk to indicate that they supported the Second Amendment and gun rights. Now let's, by the way, let me mention this before we get off on something else. As you heard from Abe Hamilton, bottom of the hour, we are collecting listener stories from our listening audience, from those that have been impacted by Focal Point or by American Family Radio, and encourage you to call in and record your listener story. Let us know how Focal Point, let us know how AFR has meant something in your life. Here's a number to call. Jot it down, 877-876-8893. That's 877-876-8893. Call that number and you'll access a recording device that will allow you to record your listener testimony, and you can tell us why Focal Point or AFR has motivated you to become more involved in the culture war, how AFR or Focal Point has impacted you in some way. You can explain why AFR or Focal Point is important to you and your family. Talk about the impact that AFR or Focal Point's had on your life and how God has used AFR or Focal Point in your family's life. That number again is 877-876-8893.
For me, this is one of the most important parts of our share-a-thon as far as what we produce out as a production item. It's amazing at the testimonies that you hear. It just it touches my heart every time I hear them. There's people's lives changed by what they're hearing. And it's just a really humbling.
Yeah. Well, and you heard Abe talk about how meaningful it is to him, how pleasantly surprised he was to find out how many people had been ministered to and encouraged by his program. So it means a lot to the AFR family, to those that are on the air. It means a lot when we hear collectively or individually that the work we're doing is making a positive impact on the lives of people in our listening audience. So again, that number one more time is 877-876-8893. Now I want to finish this segment by talking about the Mueller investigation in Washington, D.C. and all that kind of thing. First, let's begin with a second Tucker Carlson clip number 5, again This is on a different topic. This is back on the topic of voting rights and all that. Tucker Carlson, remember, they interviewed that individual that said anybody anywhere in the world ought to be able to vote in our elections. Let's listen.
I'm trying to track this because I want to take it seriously, and I do think this is the next frontier in liberalism. I think the Democratic platform will reflect what you're saying probably very soon.
The next frontier in America. You mean the future?
Oh, there's no doubt.
Yes.
Yeah, that's absolutely the future. But so Ambassador Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, spent, I think, like 20 years here. I think his kids grew up here. Certainly a big contributor economically to the city of Washington. Why should I be upset when he votes or influences our politics?
Well,
by this standard.
There's so many people that we are sad that vote, right? But I mean, unfortunately, we don't have people voting that should be voting. We only have, I think, 59% turnout voting right now. So people who do contribute and are great people and contributing should be allowed to vote. So maybe if we get more good guys voting,
good. Well, I'm glad we can give up on the Russian collusion narrative. It was dumb from the beginning, and now I feel good about it because you know what? They're just transitory Americans, undocumented Americans, which I love.
No.
Catholic, yeah.
He's got a good point. Really good point.
Yeah. So, all right, so that's Tucker Carlson weighing in. Now, on this Mueller investigation, I've got Jim Jordan again, and the reality of this is we have invested, we've talked about this frequently, but there's no legal basis for this special counsel even to exist because remember the law says that a special counsel can't be appointed unless there's a specific crime that's identified by the Attorney General that they are to investigate. It has to be a crime that the Department of Justice cannot investigate because of conflict of interest. Well, no crime was ever specified. This special counsel investigation should not even exist. And then we have further problems, more problems with this Andrew McCabe. Here is Jim Jordan talking with the aforementioned Laura Ingraham. Let's listen.
We don't know what will come out of that, but we do know about Andrew McCabe that he didn't lie just once, he lied 4 times. So 4 times he lied to James Comey, he lied to the Office of Professional Responsibility, and he lied twice under oath to the Inspector General. And remember, this is Andrew McCabe, Deputy Director of the FBI. This is Andrew McCabe. The text messages between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page talk about Andy's office, the meeting where they talk about the insurance policy in case Donald Trump is actually president of the United States. So that's why this is significant. And again, it wasn't once, it wasn't twice, wasn't even 3 times. 4 times he lied about leaking information to the Wall Street Journal about the FBI. When the Attorney General writes Congress and says, only under extraordinary circumstances do we appoint a second special counsel. Well, how about these facts, Laura? James Comey's been fired. Deputy Director Andrew McCabe has been fired. Jim Baker, former chief counsel at the FBI, has been demoted and reassigned. Peter Strzok, former deputy head of counterintelligence, has been demoted and reassigned. And Lisa Page, former FBI counsel, has been demoted and reassigned. If those aren't extraordinary circumstances warranting a second special counsel, I don't know what the heck is. So I don't know why the Attorney General keeps postponing this. Everyone in town knows we need a second special counsel to get to the bottom of this. How can Mr. Huber, and he's probably a great lawyer, I don't know much about Mr. Huber from Utah, but how can he investigate his boss, Rod Rosenstein? That's who he reports to. Mr. Rosenstein is involved in all this FISA abuse that we think took place. So you have to have a second special counsel. I hope Jeff Sessions figures that out and names one very soon.
And apparently Jeff Sessions is intending to keep that investigation in-house by appointing this lawyer from Utah by the name of Huber to be in charge of the investigation. Now, Alan Dershowitz has been busy in this whole deal defending Donald Trump and attacking the reason or even the existence of this special counsel and the investigation. Clip 9.
Well, I think the investigation should end, and I think the Congress should appoint a special nonpartisan commission, not a congressional committee. That's too partisan. A nonpartisan commission consisting of real experts to look into the whole issue of Russia's attempt to influence our election and future attempts to influence our elections. That's the way it's done in other Western democracies. They appoint royal commissions, investigatory commissions, nonpartisan commissions. They don't appoint special counsel and tell them, get that guy. You know, that's what they did in the Soviet Union. Stalin and Beria, Lavrenti Beria, the head of KGB, said to Stalin, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. That's what special counsel does.
And that's what Bob Mueller's trying to do. He's trying to find some crime to pin on people because he doesn't have a crime to investigate. Collusion is not a crime in the federal code. Clip number 10, here's Alan Dershowitz, and he's afraid that what the special counsel has done and will do is manufacture crimes to get his man. Let's listen.
When you appoint a special counsel, you give him targets, and you say, you better get that guy or the people around him, and we're going to give you tens of millions of dollars, and if you come up empty-handed, you're a failure. And so special counsel always has the goal of getting the people, and they're going to find crimes, or they're going to manufacture crimes, or they're going to stretch the criminal law to fit the crimes, because they're not going to come away empty-handed.
You know, so his point is Bob Mueller has got to come away with a scalp. And he's got to get as close to Donald Trump as he possibly can, because this has been going on for a long time. People know he's got 17 high-priced attorneys. He better come up with something. We'll be right back.
Exposing Washington with Walker Wildman.
So who is responsible for the dysfunction in Washington? That's what we're going to be discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio. Exposing Washington with Walker Wildman.
So who is responsible for the dysfunction in Washington? That's what we're going to be discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
This is Dan Celia from Financial Issues. You know, we look at the volatility in the markets right now, or the lack of anything in the markets, and this is a great time to take a pause, rethink all of our portfolio, look at our asset allocation model. Are we following the asset allocation model as it should be? Are we overweighted one place or another? You know, I've been an advocate for biblically responsible investing for many, many years. I've been an advocate for charitable gift annuity because I'm an advocate for permanent income. Call the AFA Foundation and start talking about it.
A knowledgeable AFA Foundation representative will gladly explain the nuances of charitable gift annuities and answer your questions. Find out about charitable gift annuities when you call 800-326-4543, extension 345. 800-326-4543, extension 345, or by visiting afafoundation.net.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point, Brian Fisher.
Welcome back. Number to call if you want to join our conversation is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Anna McCabe, by the way, created a GoFundMe page, raised $500,000, so he's called off the jam on his GoFundMe page. Figures he's probably raised enough for his defense. Joseph DeGenova, he just absolutely nuked Rod Rosenstein. Says that he points out what we've been saying from the very beginning. There's no legal basis for this council even to exist, and he accuses Rosenstein of acting with cowardice. He says he did it to cover his fanny, and I think it is a disgraceful and cowardly act that Rosenstein did because he didn't want to make tough political decisions. And remember, Rosenstein is Mueller's supervisor. He's supposed to be supervising Mueller. I said from the very beginning, I think Rosenstein is completely intimidated by Bob Mueller. There's no way in the world little tiny Rod Rosenstein is going to get in Bob Mueller's face and tell him what he can and cannot do. That is just not going to be a happening thing. So he's just allowing Bob Mueller to take this investigation anywhere he wants to go, whether it's in channel or not. Anyway, let's a couple more sound bites before we go to the phones. 888-589-8840. Here's Alan Dershowitz talking here about Rod Rosenstein, what we were just talking about.
I think Ron Rosenstein ought to say to the special counsel, do not investigate the private finances of the president before he became president. Do not investigate his relatives. Do not investigate his sex life. Don't do to President Trump what Ken Starr did to President Clinton. Started with Whitewater, ended up with a blue dress. That's not the appropriate way a special counsel should operate. Look, I think Rod Rosenstein is concerned more about his reputation than anything else. I don't understand why he's not recused. He is the key witness in the firing of Comey.
So in other words, Rosenstein should have recused himself. He's too involved in this. He's got a conflict of interest. He was central in the whole activity that led up to the firing of James Comey. He's going to have to testify in that part of the investigation. Should have recused himself from day one. Here is the last Alan Dershowitz clip talking about the collusion issue.
Collusion, if it happened, and there's no evidence that it happened, would be a sin. It would not be a crime. It is not a crime to collude about an election unless there are payments made or violations of the federal law involving gifts to campaigns from foreign governments. But collusion itself is not a crime.
And do you see any instances of obstruction of justice?
Absolutely not. I think that the president cannot be charged with obstruction of justice for exercising his constitutional authority. He has the authority to fire anybody in the executive branch. Supreme Court has said that.
So he has the authority to do it, and he cannot be prosecuted or cannot be found at fault for exercising the constitutional authority he has to hire and fire in the executive branch and direct them to do their jobs. All right, well, let's go to the phones. 888-589-8840 is the number, 888-589-8840. Give us a call if you want to weigh in. Let's go to James in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Again, number to call if you want to jump in the conversation here. A lot of topics you can talk about. Anything we've addressed on the program today, you're welcome to weigh in on. 888-589-8840. Let's go to James in Jonesboro. James, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hi, Brian. I was trying to get in a little earlier to talk about the arrest on minorities.
Yes, go ahead.
That you were talking about earlier. And I'm Asian Mexican, and I know the news always talks about how a lot of blacks and Hispanics get arrested, but they never focus in on the Asian Americans who have the lowest crime rates and the highest percentage of families graduating college.
Yeah.
Out of everyone.
Yeah. And you talk about a group that's racially discriminated against, James. It's Asian Americans. I mean, you talk about them applying to the premier colleges in the country, like the Harvards and the Yales and so forth. They have an absolute positive penalty. They have to score X number of points higher on the SAT than white students do, than Hispanic students do, than African-American students do, to even be considered. So they're being actively discriminated against in applying to colleges. And you ask why they're so successful, and one of the things, James, is that the rate of dissolution in Asian American families is about the lowest of any demographic group. In the white population, it's around 30% of the children are born into single-parent families. In the Hispanic community, it's over 50%. In the African-American community, it's over 70%. But it's down around 20% in the Asian American community. So they have intact families. They place a high value on education. So they work with their kids from the very beginning to help them get the best education they possibly have. And and you're right, James. Very, very little attention is given to that. But that's where your real racial discrimination is occurring right now in America, is against Asian Americans in the educational system.
Well, and pretty much every part, because they expect Asians to outperform everyone.
Yeah. Well, and part of that is the Asians set high expectations for themselves. Their parents set high expectations for them. And, the higher the expectations, if you're given the resources, the higher you're going to be able to reach. All right, James, thanks for the call. 888-589-8840 is the number, 888-589-8840. Let's swing it over to Elizabeth in Louisiana. Elizabeth, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, I was wondering, with these, everybody is so worried about gun control when it comes to school shootings. So is there not a way that federal funds could be put to where they could do metal detectors at all schools and not be worried so much about gun control in other areas?
Well, I do think that there's a lot of talk now about metal detectors and making them kind of universally available and universally used. I know in every public school in New York City, for instance, they've got metal detectors already. I remember being struck by this. This was back in the 90s I was reading about this, and I was struck by the fact they had metal detectors for kids to get into elementary school. But you realize, well, they have to have that because they're trying to check gun violence and don't want their kids getting stabbed, and, you know, knives will set off a metal detector. So it's possible. I know there's a lot of talk about that, about making funds available, federal funds available for schools to put metal detectors up. I know they're talking about it, for instance, in the Parkland system where this shooting happened. Whether they'll do it or not, we don't know. But, you know, they're going to start limiting access and controlling entrances to these schools like they do at courthouses and places like that. Everybody's got to go through a metal detector and that kind of stuff. It's a shame that we have to do it, you know, that our culture has changed to the point where we have to resort to this. It doesn't have to be that way. You know, a lot of people grew up in America at a time when people left their doors open night. They didn't lock their cars. Now, I went to a high school where the fathers of their sons who went to the high school where my son played baseball, they talked freely about the days when they would park their pickup trucks in high school back in the 60s and 70s, park their trucks in the school parking lot with their guns in a rack in the pickup truck, in the cab, unlocked. Everything was unlocked. The guns would be loaded and everything would be unlocked. So that you know, there isn't any reason why we couldn't have that culture again if we could get the Bible and prayer back into our public schools.
We did it here in my years growing up.
Yeah.
We carried our guns because we either went hunting before or after school. So during hunting season, trucks were loaded.
Yeah, everybody understood that and everybody accepted it. Well, let's go to Jay in Texas. Jay, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hey, brother. I just want to mention a few things real quick. I think if we would return back to the severity that there used to be for treason, I think not only that, I think that these people, whether they're Republican or Democrat, they want to play games, and they want to play political games and point the finger at everybody else. I think we need to return back to the law that says if you commit treason, then you shouldn't go into prison. You should go under the prison. If you commit espionage, anything tied in with the high crimes against America, because what they are is they're stealing from the American taxpayers who are paving their way. I mean, we are the kings and queens of America, not them. They may be the elite that perceive that, but the only reason why is because we've allowed it.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I think everybody realizes we need to do something. You know, this teenager that killed 4 people in a drunk driving wreck 4 years ago, he was just released from prison. And he said, look, my problem was affluenza. I was just too rich, and I didn't really have an appreciation for the consequences of my behavior. This is a guy killed 4 people. This is a guy that should have been executed because he's directly responsible through his negligence for the deaths of 4 people, or either that or a long prison term. Instead, he's out free as a bird. Got another Target story, by the way. A man exposed himself to a child in a Target store women's bathroom. Remember, this is the thing we talked about from the very beginning. This thing is going to give an opportunity for sexual predators to go into areas that are reserved for women in Target stores and engage in sexual misconduct. And that's what this guy did. Girl sit in a stall. He goes into the stall where she is and exposes himself to her. This is in a Target store. So that's why we have chosen to boycott them. If you haven't done it, I encourage you to join us in that. All right, let's go to Jay in. Let's go to Helen in Texas. Sorry about that. Helen in Texas, or Kentucky rather. I'm sorry, I'm totally mixed up on my geography and my names and everything. Anyway, Helen, the floor is yours. What's on your mind?
Aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question about how do you get in touch with McConnell, because you can't get a phone call through. I mean, I don't have internet or anything like that, so you can't. They won't take a phone call.
Have you tried to call his office? Have you tried to call his office in Washington D.C.?
Yeah, office won't take a message. You're either too early or too late. So.
Well, I think he's ducking because he knows that people have
complaints.
He is. Yeah.
Because I've been trying to get hold of him a long time. So.
Well, I wish I had an answer for you, Helen, but I don't. I don't know if a guy won't answer his phone. Very unusual, by the way, for somebody on Capitol Hill not to answer the phones and take messages from every caller, because that's the lifeblood. These are their constituents they're hearing from. If they won't even take calls from their constituents, Helen, you're in Kentucky, then I don't know what that says about the guy, but he's ready to be replaced and probably needs to be replaced. All right, Helen, thanks for the call. I appreciate that. By the way, a piece of good news to end the story, end the day on. A 13-year-old boy fell 25 feet into a drainage ditch at Los Angeles' Griffith Park disappeared. They found him 12 hours later. He's alive. He went through some kind of a maze. Focal Point, American Family Radio. See you back here tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
AFA Action Alerts. When you subscribe, we'll notify you once or twice a week about a critical issue facing our country. AFA Action Alerts have been very successful in influencing legislation, as well as getting positive results from America's Fortune 500 companies.